People will be coming in. Oh, now, thank you, Yi, for recording it. Every time we do this, I tell myself, remember to record it. And if it was up to me, I would forget. So thank you, Yi, for doing that. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for logging on this 2nd of January, 2024. I feel like the older I get, the faster time goes. So I can't believe it's already a new year.
Deja, I told you Deja's on her way.
Oh, say that again. Oh, I'm going to mute you, CK. I can't hide. There she goes. I'm Amanda Thurman, and I'm the co-chair with Bridget Miranda of the Adjunct and Professional Development Committee. I'm also the co-chair of the Advanced Practice Nursing Programs, along with Dr. Karen French. And so thank you for joining us. You know, if those of you that have been to these before, we do 3 times a year, 2-hour meetings. And you will receive important information today about your job, hopefully how to do your job and all the resources you need. We will get an update from our dean after our devotional from Bridget tonight. And then Dr. Sharon Titus and I are going to do an educational offering on how to write an academic warning. So I think it will be a fun-filled 2 hours. But again, thank you for joining us. And I think somebody needs to mute. I'm going to mute. There we go. So without further ado, Bridget, are you ready for a devotional to get us started?
I am. Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah.
To share my screen. Thank you for the opportunity to just share a quick, I'm going to call them couple words that I felt like, each year my church prepares and they pray over a word for the year for the congregation. And not that this is that, but as I was journaling this morning, I just felt like this word just kept coming up from last week, and I wanted to share it with you. So first, Happy New Year. And the word that I want to talk about briefly is the word anew. And this word means to do something in a new or different way.
Bye.
But what stood out to me about this definition from the Oxford Dictionary was that it said typically in a more positive way. And I think that, when we're beginning a new year or a new chapter, a new semester, we're always looking to do something better, hopefully. And in a season of trying to find those things that will improve our teaching, but not just our teaching, but also our spiritual connection with Jesus, I thought that this word was very fitting. In the Bible, it says in Ephesians 2:10, and this is from the New Living Translation, it says, "For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew," so better, right? 2.0, anew in Christ Jesus, so we can do the good things he planned for us long ago. I like to cross-reference with other versions of the Bible, and it says, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk with him." And I don't know about you, but for me, I like to plan, and January seems to be that natural month of when we're trying to plan for the rest of the year. But what grabbed my attention is that it said that it's in Christ Jesus, so we can do the good things he planned for us long ago. And sometimes we capture some of his plan with our plans, and sometimes they align. And other times we need to focus on how to rebalance and get back in line with his plan. All right. Many of you have probably heard the expression never say never. And it's always a negative connotation. In the dictionary, it says not at any time, not at any occasion. Sounds like a bad word, right? Like negative, something we don't want to use. But I just wanted to share one more thing with you, It says in Lamentations, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning, and great is his faithfulness. So this word never, how many of us look at it as a negative word, but in the right context, like in Lamentations, that word is so powerful and so positive, and it's a promise to us, right? His love is never ceasing and his mercies never come to an end. So for this semester, for this year, I just like to pray over all of us in the spirit of the word anew and Lamentations. Dear Lord, thank you for this evening, for bringing all of us here to this moment to share a word of prayer with you. Thank you, Father, for my colleagues, for our families, our friends, and the connection that we have with you. I pray, Lord, that you would speak to us in however you seem is fitting. And I pray that we would be just refilled afresh, and that we can feel like we are anew. In Jesus' name we pray. Please bless this time tonight. Amen.
Thank you so much, Bridget.
You're welcome. I will pass it back on to you.
Yes, thank you. I love it when you see a word differently than what we're used to. So every time I think of that word, I will know that it's a refresh. So a better version of myself, 2.0.
Right there.
Your video's
Yeah,
off, so you
oops,
should
I'm
be
gonna
fine.
mute. I'm gonna mute some people here. All right. I think next on our agenda is we have our dean with us, Dr. Renee Poza. And thank you for being here. And we are going to get an update from her on School of Nursing events. So I will pass it off to her.
Thanks, Amanda and Bridget, and for your committee for organizing these evenings together once a semester. It's good to see a lot of familiar faces, and if I can't see you, at least I see names on the screen. And so thanks as always for continuing to teach with the School of Nursing and our students and all of the work that you do to support us graduating. So I hope everyone enjoyed happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year. I feel like it's the one time when we maybe get a 10-day period that not only we leave each other alone, but the students leave us alone because, you know, we do run pretty much 24/7. So I do hope that you had some time to enjoy some downtime and some time of refreshment as we go anew into our year of 2024. I'm looking forward to some exciting times in 2024. And so I'll just spend a few minutes giving you some updates, both at the university level, but at the School of Nursing, and then I'll open it up for any questions. I guess one of the new things as we move forward is the last time I saw you all together as an adjunct, I was an interim dean. And so as of October 1st, our Dr. Anita Hank appointed a new dean for the School of Nursing. I must say it is quite the honor, and I am amazed to be in this spot because many years ago I was an alumni, right? I got a BSN from APU and an MSN and a postmaster's family nurse practitioner. So it is truly an honor to be leading this School of Nursing, but especially even more so because it's my alma mater. So near and dear into my heart. So thanks for all of your support, and give me those critiques too, that I only get better when I hear what's going well and what's not going well. So look forward to great things ahead with you. Let me give you a little bit of briefly some university updates, because you may have seen some emails that have gone out from the president, I would say over the last maybe 2 months. And there was a town hall for students. And so with one of the things that Dr. Hank, that our provost, is working on, that you may hear on the academic side, is we're in discussions about a reorganization of schools and colleges. And so what that means for the School of Nursing is potentially we could merge with some other healthcare disciplines. And I actually think that's a very exciting opportunity, and I look forward to that. So I think where you possibly are hearing some angst, and maybe you're hearing it from students. I'm not hearing it a lot because it really does not impact the School of Nursing tremendously. It's more around those of you that were working with undergrad students in our undergrad, and there's conversations going on about, so there's a couple different proposals that are on the table, and it's working its way through faculty senate and through administration, and ultimately there is some outside consultants that are being worked with to help provide guidance around this. But what it would potentially look like for School of Nursing is then to become a College of Nursing and Health Science. And don't get stuck on the name. It's not been named yet, but that eventually would potentially be the direction that it's looking like we are going to. So I do anticipate that this spring, the university will decide on which proposal they're going to go with. That would then give us the opportunity to have some other disciplines that are healthcare related join us. I think we'll have some great synergy, not only in what we do in the classroom with educating. I always say, you know, life is a team sport, but healthcare is a team sport. And we shouldn't wait until people are in practice to figure out how to work in a team, but how do we educate as a team, even right in our entry practice to practice programs and that. So I guess I think that gives us some great opportunities, and I look forward to that. So as I have more information about that, I'll make sure to message out. But just if there's some of the students were saying, you know, why are we doing this, and what's the reason behind it, and how does it impact my program? So if you're hearing from students and they're asking about accreditation of programs and all of that, you know, it is not have anything to do with accreditation. Speaking of that, the School of Nursing, we are in a like mid-cycle accreditation. So our report went into CCNE. That's the national where we are accredited through nursing, all of our nursing programs through CCNE. That report went in on December 1st. Yay. So that's behind us, and now we're focused on our BRN report. So this spring we will be going through a reapproval visit with the Board of Registered Nursing. So that affects the pre-licensure programs and our nurse practitioner program. So anyways, just so in case you're hearing stuff from students or anything, if there's questions that come up, you know, certainly message to your program directors or your department chairs. But I think that gives you an update of what the university is thinking of. School of Nursing, I would say you've got some different faces now that are even on this meeting. So Jeff and Jasmine Lord and Jeff Polstermeyer were both in the dean's office, and often Jeff and maybe even Jasmine was on this meeting supporting us, and he was the one you went to when you had Kronos questions or all of that. So both of them are now have transitioned out of their full-time roles, and they're in part-time positions as we look for replacements for Jeff and Jasmine. So we've got two new faces probably here on the School of Nursing staff with you. So Yi, I don't know if Yi, you're on, if you want to wave at everyone. So
Hi.
Yi has Jang has joined us in the School of Nursing. She's been with us in the operations team in the dean's office for a year and a half now, right? Yi?
Yep.
Yep. So she has got great technology skills and understanding of software and all of that. And so many times those adjunct contracts are getting routed for signatures come from Yi's looking at the TAMs and working with the program directors and the department chairs, and then making sure that your contracts are getting routed appropriately with the appropriate amount of units and the rate and all of those things that we have to, those details that we pay attention to. And then Lisa Santos is also on the meeting. There, Lisa's waving. So Lisa is our budget manager in the School of Nursing, and she also is very instrumental in the supply ordering with all the labs. So those of you that are working in skills and simulation, you may know Lisa from that. If you're working in iHuman or Novex or any of our virtual simulation products, Lisa's also, or Kaplan, or all. So there's a lot of things that goes across Lisa's desk. So thanks, Yi and Lisa, for supporting the team and making sure that the faculty have what they need to provide good support for students. You also have some new program managers that have joined the School of Nursing. So Michelle Ravella will start in January. She's going to support the nurse practitioner program. Paul Oliver transitioned out of his role in the fall. And so Michelle's coming on board. She's actually a nurse practitioner from many years and is excited to work with students as they're entering their nurse practitioner journeys as students. And then Lydia Lozano, I think Lydia might be on this call. So Lydia is supporting the nurse practitioner program as a program manager too in our San Diego campus. So well, you'll have two new faces there if you work with the nurse practitioner students and in those programs. Sam Stout is another name that you might hear if you're working in the traditional undergrad program. Sam was a student worker of ours. He graduated with a double major. I think if I remember his majors, theology and honors. And he's in our temporary program manager role in the traditional undergrad program. He's great because he understands the students because he's not that far from being a student himself and is connecting with them. But we are searching for a program manager in that department. So just a few new faces there in the School of Nursing for you. We do have 8 new full-time faculty that are in faculty orientation and starting to teach in the various programs. I think all of the programs probably have some new faculty faces there that you might see. And then I will mention we had one real tragedy in loss and Nancy Luce, you know, thanks so much for you and Linda Sirleach. We lost one of our MSN students right the week of graduation, and she was scheduled to be hooded on Thursday night and receive her diploma from the president on Saturday, and on Tuesday night of that week she suddenly at 46 passed away. So please keep her family. She's got 5 boys through the ages of 21 to 28. Her mother was able to be at graduation and came from Mississippi, but just, you know, that things happen so rare and so suddenly. And so,
You know, her sister was able to get there too, and she was also the recipient of the Outstanding Graduate Award. So her oldest son was able to come up and receive it for her.
yeah, so thanks to those that we were able to honor them, and they still participated in the ceremony, but so tragic, and what a loss for that family and for us and all the classmates that she had in that area. So I mentioned this where we are in the accreditation with CCNE and BRN. Some of you, Gada, I see, you know, you always ask about the international. So we've got 4 students that are coming later this week from Norway. They're coming, and they're 4 BSN students that are in their junior year, and they're going to be studying with us for the semester. We also have 4 students then from that are juniors in our traditional undergrad program that are traveling on the 11th over to Bergen, Norway, and they will spend a semester over in Norway. So that thanks to all of the people behind the scenes that are making that happen. But I'm so excited to have our exchange going again, that learning and engagement. The agreement was signed, and it also provides the ability for master's students to exchange as well as doctoral students to do some exchange. So we look forward as we get into more of the summertime, to potentially receiving some graduate students as well as sending our graduate and doctoral students over to Norway. And this also is an opportunity for us that with our Chinese partners. So we plan to receive 7 nurse leaders from China. They will be coming from the 2nd affiliated hospital in Hangzhou, and they will be with us in March and April for an 8-week leadership course and certificate program. And then we will hope to send our students back over to China, probably not until the fall semester, but that agreement was signed, and it used to be an exchange just at the bachelor's level, but that has been expanded. They're looking for more research opportunities for their nurse leaders to come and do some research here alongside of our faculty and alongside of our students. So we have two new universities that were in early discussions. One's a faith-based Christian university out of Indonesia, and the other one is a state university in Seoul, South Korea. So those are also early in the discussion, but has potential there. And Julie Boyd, one of our adjunct faculty and alumni, who is runs the Living Room Ministries in Kenya.
Yeah.
She is taking a group of the Elm students this spring. We'll be going over to see Julie and spending time with her in Kenya. So very exciting to have our international opportunities open up again, and that always opens up opportunities for students to participate in programs as well as faculty. So then I just wanted, lastly, on the School of Nursing side, we've had received 2 grants, one from Canyon City Foundation, and another from UniHealth, and it supports work around not only the homeless population, but pop-up clinics in school districts. And so we just this fall did some pop-up clinics with our Azusa School District. They were very successful, and so we're hoping to do more of those types of community outreach, connecting with schools that need support. Both see Maria on, our school nurse and that program. So thanks for running that program and continuing to have good pipeline of school nurses there in the workforce. But that's also a good place for our students and learning opportunities to be alongside the school nurses there. Let me tell you a little bit about pipeline. Those of you, I think, that are in positions and are in the workforce, what are we seeing as far as schools of nursing? And we're still seeing good enrollments into our programs at all levels. However, we've seen a little bit of dip, I would say, across the country. BSN enrollments are tracking about 6 to 9% down. MSN programs are tracking about 13% down. DNP programs are actually up. They're up 1%. So when you look at like Peter Berghaus and some of his work, he's trying to predict, where are we with the nursing shortage? Are we going to make an impact? Are we graduating about the number of students we need? The trend of seeing those both BSN and MSN numbers in enrollments going down is a little concerning for those of us in the dean's level. And so trying to think about engaging. Remember a couple of years ago when we were engaged with Johnson & Johnson, and we did some ad campaigns about image of nursing and what's it like to be a nurse. We're talking about, maybe it's time to get some of that because we wonder how much of the nurse burnout and the stressed workforce and all of that is then concerning either parents or students that are considering as nursing a career that I want to go into. So you guys all have influence in that as you're talking with potential students and you're talking with your friends and family and all of that. So just gives you an idea of kind of what some of the things we're paying attention to. I think students, you guys see it in the classroom in your clinical settings. They're experiencing still some unique mental health challenges. I call it like our post-pandemic, post-COVID challenges. Financial challenges still are often a concern. There was a study done here at APU around food insecurity. I was astounded by the number of undergrad students that will admit to having food insecurity, even amongst nursing students. And so all of those things that we can do around student support services, whether it's financial, whether it's supporting mental health, it's supporting all of the life stressors that they have. Please let us know how we can support you if you have students that are struggling with some of those challenges. I think also we're paying attention to exit interviews. Every time we have groups of students graduate, we meet with them in focus groups to just try and, you know, see what are program improvements that we could do. We are starting to hear okay, I really like online learning, and I know it's convenient and it saves me driving and all of that, but I kind of miss being with my colleagues. We're even hearing that the students are getting together. They'll like pick a library and they'll have a library date, and when they go and meet at a library somewhere, or they have, you know, group text, and they're really trying to connect with each other, but they are looking for ways to see each other physically. So I'm just kind of putting that out there. I think we need to continue to look for ways to bring students back together, whether that's in our labs or study groups or classroom settings. Again, I think we're all realizing the benefits of the online, but also where the limitations of online teaching are. So please, as you're working with students, look for ways to connect them socially as well as, you know, with you and each other academically. So I think faculty, you know, what are some of the things that we're facing? I was the commencement speaker for the December. I don't know how many of you listened to commencement or attended commencement, but I think you can find it online. But one of the things I talked about in my commencement address was the whole issue of AI and artificial intelligence, and the idea of the word of the year this past year by Merriam-Webster's dictionary was authentic. And so that was my theme, was being authentic for a commencement address. But the opposite, where that comes from, is this term hallucinate. Now in nursing, we all know what it means to hallucinate, right? You're hearing things, you're seeing things that aren't really there. But in the world of artificial intelligence, hallucinations are now this false information that's being put out there as fact. And so faculty are going to be facing this issue of how many students are using ChatGPT, what are they using it for, what's okay, what's not okay, what's a hallucination. I heard a lecture by a Harvard professor that said it's amazing sometimes you ask these AI programs and they will make up references. They'll make up articles that aren't even there and don't exist, and do our students even know to question that? So I think that's going to be one of our things in 2024 is how do we take the good of AI, but then how do we then help our students know what to use AI for and where are the pitfalls? And then those of us that are grading papers, what do we do when that Turnitin or whatever program comes back 100% AI? Then what's next? So Amanda and Bridget, maybe that's our next summer, is we have some tips about what do you do as faculty when you're faced with that. So more to come. I attached in my update here on a letter that I sent to all adjunct faculty. If you were with us in the fall, it came out like mid-November. But it gave you some references with some videos. And if you haven't watched Mike Trong's video on AI, that may be helpful to give you just some context of what academics are thinking around AI. Right now, the university currently has 3 options that you can choose in your classrooms. You can choose, and you need to let students know what you're choosing. Are you in setting up a syllabus where they can't use any AI and they have, you know, is that the way you want to go? The other option would be they can use AI, they just have to cite it, or are you somewhere in the middle? So there's language for all 3 of those that you can place in your syllabus. And I'm sure we can get you the references if you don't have those references about what that syllabus language is. We're working to try and get it into SIL for those of you that are using that program as you create your syllabus. Those of you that are doing clinicals and are working with somebody else that's created the syllabus, you might want to just connect with them to make sure that you're reinforcing whatever policy they've chosen to adopt within their classrooms. But I think we will continue to try and figure out what this new term of hallucinations is versus being authentic, which we know integrity of a nurse is so important as we move forward. And then finally, I just attached the AACN Essentials. In 2020, was it 21? I believe AACN adopted some new essentials, and they went, this is for schools of nursing and for nursing education standards. We went from having bachelor's standards, master's standards, and doctoral to basically having 2 levels. You have level 1 competencies and level 2 competencies. And so I think this, when we look at the going forward in 2024, where are we going to go with our curriculums? What is nursing education is going to look like? Nursing as education is moving into a competency-based education. So if you hear the term CBE, competency-based education, that's what we're talking about. And it's really looking at competency development of our students so that they are practice ready when they graduate from our programs. So it was kind of sobering to me when I looked at some of the data. In 2025, the study showed that 35% of our graduates were practice ready. Now, this is always the disconnect between those that are hiring into practice and those of us that are educating and graduating people. Like, can we come together and agree on what practice ready looks like? But in 2005, 35% were ready for practice. 2015, 10 years later, it was down to 23%. 2020, it was down to 14%. And in 2022, the study showed 9% were ready for practice. And so when we look at what the gap is to graduate somebody that's ready for practice, that I think is the real, what's behind the idea of competency-based education, which means it's much more performance-based assessments. So, and it's not a one time you're testing something and never test it again. You're continuing to look at what are these key competencies, both for an entry to practice as well as at the advanced practice, and how do I continue to reinforce and do formative assessment as well as summative assessment. And so those of you that love curriculum development and what does the performance look like, I think we're going to do much more performance testing or assessment monitoring in our sim labs and our skills labs. Those of you that are doing clinical, how do we put this all together so we're all on the same page? And I think this is going to be where we start to create portfolios for students that they go out into practice and they continue their portfolio as they go along. They graduate from us, they go to work someplace, you add some skill sets from that new job that they have, then they go on and they get a certificate in something or a badge in something. Maybe they go back to school, they add some more to their skill set, but you can see how the portfolio of a nurse develops over time and with different experiences, both in the workplace and the education. So I think we're starting to see what that is going to look like to have a real true. So we're looking actually for an electronic portfolio. So those of you that have computer people that you know, what would a portfolio that a nurse could take with them from job to job or school to school as they add to their skill set along the way. So that just gives you a little thing, a little snippet of kind of where I think the direction of 2024 is going to go, both from the school perspective as well as some of the stuff that we will be working on in the nursing profession. And again, I thank you for the time that you take out of your busy lives to work with our students and help them progress and develop the skill sets that they need so that we are ensuring that we're producing practice-ready graduates, both from our BSN programs, our MSN programs, and our doctoral programs. And again, I thank you for the work that you do to make that happen. So I probably went longer than you wanted me to, Amanda, but I'll probably take a few questions if there's questions out there.
Yeah, a few questions would be great.
I have a question.
Hi, Janet.
Hi. So one of my concerns is just that it seems like we're going backwards a little bit. If we're so concerned about the doing that the students are, their skills, then it seems like we have worked so hard to get nurses to understand why they do what they do, and also to be able to understand the pathophysiology and put things together. So, I have students in the pediatric area at Rady's, and they really can't do much hands-on anyway. And one of the students one day said, gee, I can't even pass an aspirin. And when I asked her, is it usual for children to take aspirin? I got this blank stare. And then I said, what disease is it that children may receive aspirin? And I got a blank stare. And I said, you know what? Anybody can hand something to somebody, but it's your knowledge that's important. It's because it was for Kawasaki disease with this child. And so it just seems like we're going a little bit backwards in putting so much emphasis on the doing rather than the thinking. That's just my comment.
Yeah, it's an excellent comment. I hope that I didn't mean by student assessment that it was only the doing of like if you guys are teaching basic nursing, students often think of themselves as a nurse when they started that IV or they did a task. And we all know that clinical reasoning and thinking skills is probably more important. Those of you that are hiring new grads, right? You can probably teach them those skills as a new grad, but you want those thinking skills to be there.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
No, I think, that's why we're looking at simulation, both in virtual simulation as well as real simulation. So what are those critical things that if they don't get to see it in the actual hospital setting or clinic setting or whatever as part of a student, you wouldn't want to graduate somebody without having that experience. So we always call them maybe low volume, high risk situations. That's what we need to put those students in simulation for. So we ensure that they've had a robust ability to think through.
Yeah, I also wonder, it seems like it's so important that our nurses, our students are able to recognize deterioration in patients and things like that, because I think we're the lifeguards. The doctor stopped by for 5 minutes. It's the nurse who establishes that communication and that relationship. And it just seems like it's so important to put the emphasis on recognition. So I had one student call me one night and she said, you know how you always told us to pull the vital signs up in a graph so we could see a slow elevation of the heart rate for sepsis? And I said, yes. And she said, I did that. And she said, and I called the doctor and they put our patient in intensive care. And she caught a patient deteriorating. And so it just seems like that is the more important thing to teach. I'm done.
No, I think excellent point, Janet.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question? All right, well, thanks for being here on January 2nd, right? Back right a few days before we get the semester going. And again, I hope you have a great semester. If there's anything I can do to, any questions I ask or I can answer or any resources to point you to, don't hesitate to reach out. So thanks again so much for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Post, for coming. We really appreciate it. All right. I think what seems to be the most interesting topic of the night is always what the operations team presents, because it's the nuts and bolts of your job. So Yi, would you like to present some information that our goal is to help you, give you the tools to do your job. So hopefully this will, next section will be some of that with Yi.
Great. Thanks, Amanda. Hello, everyone. It's really nice to see you all. I think I've probably interacted with a good portion of you over email, over the SON operations email. And so love to kind of just go over the basics and some frequently asked questions. So we want to make the onboarding process as smooth as possible every single semester. And I so appreciate everything that all of you do in just being there for your students. So I want to just highlight a couple of links. First of all, you can see that this is our School of Nursing employee resources website. So many of the resources that you may need are on this website. For example, the governance, the help center, updates and calendar, etc., along with links to the various events that we have. So if you click on updates and calendar, you'll see that there's a master calendar with dates. And then if you click on help center, this is where we've been storing all of the articles for related to adjunct contracts, hiring, etc., onboarding. So just want to make sure that we highlight this, because sometimes if you have a question, it may already be here. And so I want to make sure that you have all the resources, and we keep updating this. So if there's been a question that has been coming up more frequently, then we'll make sure to update this. And then the second link is the operations team handout. And at the top, so we'll see the list of all of the people on the operations team. That's Lisa, myself, Kim, Jeannie, and then we have 2 student workers, Pablo and Taya. So when you're emailing SON operations, a variety, this whole team is looking at the email, and we're kind of working together to answer the questions that you may have. So again, the Help Center, we have a lot of helpful articles, for example, how to get your ID badge and ID, how to enter information into Chronos. I think the majority of the people on this call have already taught with us already. So you probably have already been through the hiring process, but you may have questions about how to enter your hours into Chronos. So we have articles related to that. And then of course, the contract process. So as you know, the contract process is a very fast paced, rapidly changing and high volume process that we go through every single semester. We have over 200 adjuncts, and you are all very valued, and we try our best to get the contracts to you as quickly as possible. Sometimes, we're working with the various departments to work out the fine-tuned details, how many units, the type of units, etc. So definitely bear with us as we're going through it. By this point in time, the bulk of all the contracts for the spring has already been completed. There's a few of you on your call. I know that we're waiting and trying to work through some of the details. So your contract is probably being worked on as we speak, but to make sure that we have everyone covered, please send us an email at sonoperations@apu.edu. So if you think you should have a contract, but you haven't gotten an email with your contract to sign, or sometimes the hello sign will say like you have a contract that's coming, definitely reach out to us and ask us, hey, what's going on? I just want to go over this really quickly. So on your contract, you'll have your name and ID number, and then I'll have a department. So I've gotten this question a couple of times this semester. The department is actually your home department. So it's a term that HR uses. So this is actually not the department that you're teaching for this contract. It's just the first department that you taught for. So sometimes that can be a little bit confusing. And then the campus is where you're teaching, and the department that you're teaching for is embedded in the contract ID. So I know that's like really confusing sometimes, but so if you see, okay, Nursing San Diego, wait, I'm not teaching for Nursing San Diego. Don't worry, that's the first department that you taught for. And it's just something that HR keeps a record of. And so it's always going to pop up on your contract. but that's not necessarily the department that you're teaching for. But definitely check and make sure that the campus correct and the number of units and the courses, and then most importantly, the highest degree. If there's something on your contract that's not correct, please do not sign it. Just a lot easier for us if you do not sign the contract and email us on operations right away so that we can kind of take a look and figure out with you, okay, what is happening here? Did we make a mistake? Was something like miscommunicated? So that we can reissue the contract if needed, or we can explain to you what is happening on the contract. And of course, the contract term for this year, this semester will be spring 2024. Yeah, so those are pretty much the main details to look out for. And of course, your hourly rate will be on the bottom as well in the contract dates. So there's a lot of information. I won't be able to go through all of it, but I wanted to at least make sure that you have this handout where it has all the frequently asked questions that we have, and also resources, including the organizational chart, the university calendar, and then TAMS. So if you believe that you should have a contract, you can check in TAMS to see if you have an assignment. So if you have an assignment, that means that tells us, the operations team, okay, go ahead and actually create the contract. But if there is no assignment, we can't move forward with generating the contract. So if you look in TAMS and you have no assignment for spring 2024, please contact the department chair that you believe you're teaching for and ask them to add the assignment, and then we'll go forward and actually create the contract based on the assignment in TAMS. So again, reminder, SON operations is a single point of contact for us. So if you email SON operations that reaches all of the operations team, please do not use SON adjuncts because we don't check that as much. So just a reminder about that. So if you have any questions, you can email us on operations. For sensitive or confidential questions, you can email Lisa, and then of course for academic department related questions, you can contact your chair or associate. Okay, that was a really fast run through. I see we have some chats, so I'm gonna stop sharing and look at the chats. Do you have, and then feel free to ask any questions that you may have. Okay, so.
If you have a question, you can put it in the chat, sorry, or raise your hand, whichever way you want to ask question.
Oh,
So the question here is from Christine Rial. She's an AP timekeeping was closed due to contract ending, and so she was not able to, I guess, enter her hours for the last pay period.
Okay, so we have this helpful resource. It's also listed on here. I'll put it in the chat a little bit later, where you could have a timekeeping change request form that you fill out. So, you know, if timekeeping, if you're not able to complete the time card in the pay period in Chronos, oops, oh, sorry, the link didn't copy over, but there's a form that you can fill out. And then basically you fill out the form, send it to your supervisor to fill out, to sign, and then your supervisor can send it to timekeeping@apu.edu. So this is a great form. So in case, you know, when your contract ends, so the fall contract ended December 30th, and then the spring contract date started December 31st. So that's why if you're not able to enter the hours before the end date, then you can use this form to submit and your time card, and then be paid after that. And then for the spring term, for those of you who may not have had a contract yet, you can also use this form to cover the hours that you've completed. So you worked hours this week. You can use this form in the meantime before you get access to Chronos. So this week is probably the busiest week for us and as HR as well. So HR has to enter in all these different contracts, and for the new hires, work through all the paperwork for the new hires. So sometimes there's a bit of a delay. And so, you know, definitely don't worry. We can use this form to cover and make sure that you're paid for the time that you work during this week and in the future as well. so that, you know, even if you don't have access to Chronos, you can use this form to submit your hours. Other questions? Oh.
One of the questions, the rate code for multiple contracts. Is that somewhere listed under contract or the email that we send or HR sent to the faculty?
Great question. So for multiple contracts, you should receive an email from timekeeping. So for each contract, you should receive information, and then there's instructions on there to transfer the hours between the different contract, the rate codes. So I do not have access to it. You will get access. You will get the email with instructions. So that's always a little tricky because we can't tell you. So that's sent directly to the adjunct. That's a great question. Other questions? Okay, well, if you have any other questions, feel free to email again, sonoperations@ap.edu. We're here to help, and we want to make sure this process is as smooth as possible for you. Really, thank you for your understanding as we're kind of working through all the details and logistics and everything. So more than happy to, you know, communicate over email or over the phone, whatever you need. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Yi. Really appreciate that. I know that's always a lot of questions because we want you to get paid. Yes, go ahead, Janet.
Okay, so this is just what I noticed. So I have 2 clinical groups and a classroom. So in my clinical groups, the hours that I said that are stated as the projected hours, when I add up the number of days that I am in clinical, those itself, even without any overtime, exceed what it says. Now, I know we get paid anyhow, and that's fine, but it seems though, when people are examining budgets and they're saying, oh, School of Nursing, you went over your budget. So it seems like that's just going to happen until they put down the correct number of hours that people are actually in clinical for.
That's a great point. I think sometimes if you feel like you're not getting the right number of units, I would suggest contacting your department chair or program director to kind of work that out. Yeah, I'm not quite sure about how that's determined, but definitely communicate with them if you see that something is incorrect.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that because we're certainly paid for, you know, every minute that we put down. My thing is just a bigger picture of when people have to account for their budgets and they'll say, oh, School of Nursing, look, you were over by, you know, 1,000 hours this semester. Well, part of that is because what is predicted is not close to the actual. So that's my concern, because somebody's going to have to take somebody's going to be held accountable for the fact that they are over budget when in fact the number was incorrect.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
I mean, if you have 20 clinicals and they're saying, oh, then you should get paid for 15 of them, well, then they're going to be over budget. So that's just my comment.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Janet. That actually reminded me, so on the contract, for those of you with residency students, it will only say 0.20 or 0.27, depending on if you're teaching at the undergrad versus the post-licensure division, the grad division. So, and then the number of students are actually maintained in TAMS. So, just in case that looks a little funky, that's the reason. And then last thing is for experiential learning faculty, you only will get one contract. So that's skills, BLE, and simulation. And that's because, for many of you, you're covering so many different courses. So just so that you don't have, 10 different rate codes, we're just trying to combine. So if you receive one experiential learning contract for a semester, that's it. That's kind of, we try to just limit you to one so that it's a little bit easier than having to enter 5 different rate codes. So Just wanted to clarify on that for you guys. So, okay, I think any other questions? Great, thank you so much.
Thank you, Yi, really appreciate it. And if there's questions that you think of throughout the rest of our time, you can put them in the chat and we'll get those answered for you. All right, I think we're on to our presentation. I will share my screen, and Dr. Sharon Titus and I are going to present to you on how to do an academic warning. We're very excited about this topic because these are important, and we really, really want you to feel empowered to have students be successful, and that you understand your role in this, and that you feel like you have the knowledge and skill to create an academic warning and a successful plan for the student. So Sharon has made this wonderful QR code that if you'd like to follow along on the presentation on your phone, you can scan it, but please only do it if you have an APU email address. If you're brand new to us and for some reason don't have an APU email address yet, it's best not to scan it. But if you'd like to follow along on your phone instead of on my screen, please scan the QR code and you'll have the slides ready for you. All right, so I'm going to do the first half of the presentation. Sharon's going to do the second half. I'm going to go through about 3 or 4 slides, and then we're going to hear from you about what your thoughts and feelings are on academic warnings, experiences, barriers you feel there are, successes you feel that you can share, and just have a time of conversation. And please, anytime during this presentation, please raise your hand. We love to have interaction, and I'll make sure at the end the evaluation link gets to you so you can get a continuing education unit. And thank you again for being here on this beginning of January 2024. So your objectives are many. The biggest is that you understand the purpose and types of the academic warning form. If you've never done one, we're going to walk you through step by step on how to do one. We'd like you to we're going to talk about your role and responsibility as an adjunct in completing an academic warning so that students can be successful. We're going to help you with resources for yourself and for the student so that they can be successful. We'll share links for those. We'd like you to identify barriers, which I'm sure will be many once I get your input on completing an academic warning form. And then we're going to give you some evidence-based strategies that can be used to complete an effective warning. There's a lot of literature out there on warnings, and it's really interesting. And I actually surveyed all of your chairs, and I told them we were doing this topic, and they were just thrilled because they too want you to feel empowered for student success. And every suggestion, it was really fascinating. Every suggestion that the chairs had for you, which I'll go over later, were exactly what I found in the literature. So we have really good chairs because they've either read the literature or the literature matched practice. It was fascinating. And also for fun, this is not one of the objectives, but see if you can find, this is sort of a Where's Waldo type of presentation. See if you can find the artificial intelligence embedded in this presentation. And maybe at the end, Sharon will tell you what she put in. It's fun. Okay, what are your roles and responsibilities as an adjunct for academic warnings? So if your student has exhibited behavior which violates ethical, professional, or some sort of deficiency in clinical practice, failure to maintain a passing grade at midterm may result in an academic warning. Now, you've probably seen students that are doing fine all semester and then get to the end and fail. This happens, but this happens, in fact, it happened to 2 students of ours in the APRN program just right before Christmas. It was horrible news for them right before Christmas. They were doing fine all throughout, not enough to get a warning below a B-, and all of a sudden at the end failed the final. So they have to retake the class. And there's no, there was no reason to do a warning all the way through. But ideally, we want to catch the deficiencies early, come up with a plan with the student, and see it through and do follow-up. So if they do get a warning, of course, it's placed in their file, and there's a lot of follow-up to be done as well. All right. What is your role and responsibility as an adjunct? If you give them a verbal warning, let's say, Janet, you're in clinic because you were talking about doing clinical, and the student shows up with a new set of fake nails that are 3 inches long because she's getting married this weekend. And you say, oh, this is not proper hygiene for nursing. Please remove them. And she said, I can't, I'm getting married. So you may first give a verbal, but please follow it up in writing as well. And you can also always refer to our student handbook, which is your guide. And most everything that could be violated by a student is in the handbook. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but we do have wonderful information for you in the faculty handbook and the student handbook. And so we have guides to follow in that way. You as an adjunct can initiate this. Please know that you have the power and authority to do it. It's best to always talk to your SME, stands for subject matter expert, your lead faculty. Collaborate with them, have them look at it, collaborate with the student as well on how to be successful. We'll get to that in a minute. And make sure before you do it that you do follow your department protocol. I don't know how different it is between departments, but we do want you to know that you can initiate one as adjunct. We have 4 types of warnings in the School of Nursing, and here is the first way that you can get to a warning form. Your first question might be, I've never done one. How do I even get to a warning form? Here is a link, and you can copy that, paste it, go to the School of Nursing faculty resources, and under student related resources, it's a 4-page warning form. You fill out 3 pages to start, and the last page is a follow-up. If the student violates ethical issues, professional, academic, or clinical, you can write up a warning for that. And here's some examples of that. And of course, we have a lot of AI here. And again, it can be used for good, and we can use it as well, but we all know that students are using it, so we have to watch that as well. So there's some examples of that. All right, it's time to hear from you guys. You can raise your hand or put it in the chat. What are your barriers as an adjunct faculty? What do you feel are the barriers to completing an academic warning? Or give me a story of one that you've done that was successful, or doubts, questions, anything like that. I'd love to hear from you guys. Yes, Janet.
I'm sorry to always be speaking. One of the things that I do ahead of time when we have our orientation, I have usually give them a folder, and it has the dress code in it. And I go over, and that's one of the things that I have had to address was the dress code. And so I've gone over like, okay, I removed my fake nails, you must remove your fake nails. So that's the other thing, is I comply with their dress code, so that they can't say, oh, well, you know. But the thing that I've had to give a verbal warning on was not a dress code issue, but it was a person arriving late to clinical. And we had gone over that before. And so I met her in the hallway as she was arriving, 35 minutes late. And I sent her home. And then, but before I sent her home, I said, I'm going to have to write this up for now. And if it happens again, then I'm going to submit it. And she agreed. And so next time she came back, we sat down and wrote it together. And so I do that with any academic warnings, and I also do that with any time that I send them for any form of counseling, is I sit down and we write things together. So that's basically what I've encountered or done before.
That's good. That's evidence-based to do it with the student, even though it seems so punitive. So thank you, Janet. I like that idea of writing it, and then you kind of hang on to it to see if you really need to submit it. Huh?
But I also let them know that growth, just because they are adults doesn't mean they're done growing yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I was probably one of the slowest to mature in my group, in my clinical, when I was a nurse, and said, even in my 40s and 50s, I was still occasionally being called into the office and said, now maybe you could have said that a little better. So anyway.
We're always learning.
Yeah. So I don't want them to go home and just feel horrible about themselves, but they do have to comply.
Yes, that's also in the literature, which I'll talk about in just a minute. What are as other barriers? Francis says contact with lead faculty in a timely manner. Good. Ability to print forms in clinical. Oh, interesting. That's good. Yes, those are also well documented in the literature that you need support from your lead faculty. So I suppose, Francis, you could give a verbal and then write it up when you get home, but that's a very good point. Janet says biggest barrier is time. That is in the literature as well. Even though you spend time writing warnings, it will save you time and grief in the long run. It's so true. Barriers is confidence in administering an academic warning. I'm going to stop right there because it reminds me of something I want to say, and that is one of the stories I heard most recently was that an adjunct wanted to do a warning, but the lead faculty did not agree with her. That is a huge problem for me because you have a right as an adjunct to do it. Sharon and I want you to know that if you do feel that a student needs one and someone's given you pushback who's above you, please continue to go up your chain of command. If your lead faculty doesn't agree with you, get a third opinion from the director and the chair and move it on up as you need to, because you're all very experienced. We rely on you to be our eyes and ears. We rely on you guys to run all these programs, and you have such valuable expertise that we don't want you to feel dismissed. And that was a barrier that I had heard about this semester, and it was very disturbing. Okay, Christina says barrier, damaging self-confidence of a student. So I think that's probably the hugest one. And then what else? I think we should change the name personally of an academic warning. I think it should be called a student success plan. I don't know if that's something that we can change, but it would certainly may not carry as much fear if it's called a student success plan, but really that's how we should present it to students. It's called an academic warning, but really this is for you to succeed. So thank you for that. Provide real-time feedback. That's a good one. Good. Oh, Catherine, okay, that's been your story. Lack of support when issues have to go up the chain. Wow, thank you for that. Yep, feels like why bother with all the paperwork if rules won't be enforced later. Okay, yep, we don't want that to be a barrier, but thank you for saying that. That is something that could be a system-wide issue that needs to be addressed. So thank you for sharing that, Amanda. I appreciate that.
We're getting really good feedback, Dr. Thurman. Yeah, can I jump in and make a few comments? So one of the comments I want, as I'm reading the chats, and you are all providing real, genuine experience barriers, and we want to acknowledge each and every one of those. So thank you for that. And we also want to acknowledge that sometimes the didactic barriers are a little bit different than the clinical barriers, because it seems to be more of an intimate experience in clinically. So we understand that. But one of my favorite barriers that came out is from Professor Wessel. So Professor Wessel has been a faculty for many, many, many years in many different roles. She has tremendous experience. And her words were, in the long run, right? It's going to keep you from getting in big trouble. So remember, when we're talking about a warning, you can be giving a verbal warning, but that you always want to follow that up in writing. But that doesn't mean that it has to carry out into what necessarily becomes a formal written warning. So what we are generally focusing on in this presentation is a formal warning, but we do want to acknowledge that sometimes you want to give an oral warning that then you always want to follow up with writing, and that written warning can or cannot be a formal written warning. So you may choose that. Is there any questions on that? So if you give an oral warning, you as a faculty can choose whether or not you want to put it into a formal or an informal written warning, but you will always want to put it in a written warning. Does that make sense? That written warning can simply just be an email. Here's the conversation we had. If you feel like it needs to be a formal written warning, then it will go into this. So for example, some nails, if this is a student you've never had an issue with before, you might not want to write it up as a formal written warning on this, but certainly give them the oral and then follow it up with an email written warning. Written warning does not have to be formal. Our presentation tonight is focused mostly on the formal aspect, and we're going to go over that as we go over the form with you. Any questions on that?
I'll just say one more, couple things about not being able to get a hold of a student. You can do a warning and the student doesn't have to sign it, but can still go in their file. A student may say, I don't agree with you. And if they don't agree with their warning, you still write it up and send it through the signature process to the director and chairs, and it goes in their file, but they actually don't have to sign it. But it sets the stage that you felt there was a deficiency.
So Janet Mendes, yeah, I'm not sure I understand your question. So if a student receives what's called an ADR, academic accommodation, they call it an ADR, faculty do not necessarily know that. The only time a faculty knows about any accommodation, or the only time a faculty should legally know about an accommodation, is if the student has approached you, told you about that, and or you have received a formal accommodation letter from the institution that the student is enrolled in. For us, that would be APU.
Yeah,
but you should not be receiving it from somebody else. Is that what your question is?
Well, actually, in this instance, it was a person who had an oral verbal processing problem and really has trouble with communication. And now I know that you can't have accommodations in clinical. So I referred him to, first I referred him to counseling and then referred him to his physician, because he's not going to be able to make it through an interview.
Yeah, now let me correct your statement. So that you can, federal law requires that the law states reasonable accommodation. That's the federal law. So in a clinical setting, a reasonable clinical accommodation at APU might not be reasonable at a high desert remote campus. I taught actually on an Indian reservation in the middle of nowhere in the state of Washington. That school might not be able to accommodate where APU, located in LA area, is able to accommodate. So that's why the law is written as reasonable accommodation for that institution. So I'm not understanding your question yet, Janet.
Yeah, well, okay. So this person, he can hardly get out one sentence to
Okay, so what
communicate
does that
back and
have to
forth.
do with the academic warning?
No, it's just that I guess it's maybe a little off topic, but it's just like, what do we do with that situation? And so I talked to
Yeah.
him about it, and he said, oh, he's always had trouble communicating, but that took a few minutes to get that comment out. And so I said, well, I'm concerned. I want you to be able to get the job you want, and I want you to be able to make it through an interview. And
Yeah.
so, but finally, what I talked to him about was going back to his family physician to see if he could get into some form of speech therapy again, to be able to communicate so he could get through an interview. And I also talked to him about different types of nursing roles, such as in research or in forensic nursing, things like that, rather than in a role where he has to communicate regularly with families or the patient.
Yeah, so that what you bring up would make another very good professional development time for us to deal with together.
Okay,
so we're not gonna,
sorry.
No,
that's okay.
it's fine.
Yeah, well, what Amanda and I look forward is to hearing your feedbacks on different types of things that you feel like would be helpful in learning in these professional developments. But as far as tying that to an academic warning, I don't think that what you're discussing here is a direct link. Is that correct?
Well, just in a part though, because in part of your clinical evaluation of the student, communication is very important.
Okay,
to be able
so
to communicate professionally. And so if they have does not meet in a certain area, then that's going to interfere with them passing clinical.
So again, let me take you back to the law. As far as the law is, you as faculty, your job is you have objectives for every course, right? And one of them might be communication in clinical. If that student is not meeting it, it has nothing to do with their ability or disability, right? Whether or not they have met that objective. Did they meet that or not? That you can write them up for. However, again, if a student has a disability in any form, hearing, reading, speech, anything, you cannot treat that student any differently than any other student who does not have any disability unless you have received a formal accommodation from the institution, which is for us, it's APU. That is the federal law. And or you would then can be held for discrimination. Is that clear? So even though Janet recognizes the student has a disability, unless you have received an accommodation for that student, you cannot hold that against the student. You have to treat them the same way, or you cannot even provide provisions for that student. You must treat them the same way. That is the only opportunity you can make an accommodation is if they have received, if you as a faculty have received a formal accommodation, and you will receive that as a faculty of record of that course. Dr. Heinlein has a question.
Thanks. So I do receive those accommodation emails. Letters. Like, well, you'll get an email, and then it also has something, a little blurb about the student has the responsibility of contacting the faculty for specific blah da 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 da.
You should, Dr. Heinlein, you should get an email, that blurb, and then you should also get an attachment of a formal federal form that outlines exactly what accommodation that particular student receives.
Okay, I guess maybe on the student end, I had some comments on the chat about understanding the syllabus, and the faculty also understanding the communication about the accommodation, since we're on that. Because sometimes when you're teaching online, back and forth these emails, and you really don't have a clear picture whether or not you and the student both understand completely. So sometimes this face-to-face, a Zoom face-to-face, repeating back. Okay, so student A, I understand. So I understand that X, Y, and Z. And do I understand correctly what it's almost like you need a face-to-face, because this back and forth, sometimes you're lost in communication, which has been my experience. You don't have all the details.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say that.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah.
So, yep, Frances has jumped in here on the chat. She said, you can have an accommodations in clinical, and that is correct, Frances. All right. Any other questions on that before we move on to some other barriers? But that was a very good barrier. And I think sometimes that gets down to the fuzzies, right? Of not, that the student has other needs that are not typical with most students. That becomes difficult, right?
Yes, that's our circle back around. It becomes a barrier to writing a warning.
Right.
You have a disability. That's a tricky one. Yes.
He was actually very positive with my feedback because he said, thank you, no one has addressed this. And I'm going to contact my physician, and I understand I need to be able to make it through an interview.
Good. Yeah.
And this is why you need support from your lead faculty. So it makes me sad, some of these comments, that we're not giving you guys the support you need. And I appreciate your honesty, because this is the reflection. What is it? Critical reflection. That's how we improve, if we critically reflect on ourselves. So thank you for your honest feedback. Keep putting barriers in the chat as you remember them. This is what the literature says, very much what you guys said, lack of time. We already have a heavy workload. I know in my department, if our adjuncts go over their allotted time, they need permission. So I think that's a barrier. If you have a difficult student, you're like, oh my gosh, if I write this morning, I'm gonna go over 5-10 hours. Well, we need to allow for that, and we need to allow that extra time. So please reach out to your chair or director if you go over your allotted time and that's your allotment for the semester. Lack of skill in completing. That's why we're doing this session, in hopes that you'll feel more confident and empowered to do it. Lack of support from didactic faculty or supervisor. Fear of student retaliation. I think that's probably, and I think fear of student not liking us anymore. I know for me, I've said to students, okay, I'll give you one more week to turn it in, one more week. And you just keep trying to give them chances. And then the more chances you try and give them, then I remember feeling, oh my goodness, I shouldn't have done that. They better turn that in so I don't look bad. For me, it's been almost like when I was a newer faculty, like a source of shame, like it was my fault that they didn't turn in their work and that I'm giving them too much grace. And then, so there's a lot of psychology behind this. And lack of understanding the purpose. And then you kind of think to yourself, is it really that bad what they did? Do they really need a warning? Do I really want to take all the time to do this? Do you have any mentoring, and do you have support? So it's just not an easy thing. In fact, I tell people, nursing education teaching's been the hardest job I've ever had. It is not easy.
So I was asked by a student when I was talking about speaking up. And I was asked by a student, they said, did they like you when you did that? And I said, no, they didn't always like me, but they respected me. And that's good enough for me.
And back to the comment of someone who thought the student thought they'd get kicked out for getting a warning. We really need to frame it as this is called an academic warning, but it's really a student success plan. So I think even just approaching the student like that, it is for their own good. We're not doing it to be mean. It is for their own good. So the best evidence is frame it in the context of success, make the case to them, and they probably know. They know if they're behind. They know where they fall in the clinical lineup. They know where they fall in terms of, how they're doing clinically and in class. So they probably won't be too surprised if they get an academic warning. Try and intervene early. If you have a hunch that someone's weak, but their grades might be okay, it's okay to do some remediation and write up a warning and do a success plan. Even if they're not necessarily failing. Individuate what needs to be done for them. Don't just make it textbook for what they should be doing. Individualize it to them. And ask the student, how do you think you can be successful in getting better at what vaccines a student needs? Do you want to do a simulation? Do you want to do some one-on-one sessions with me? Do you want to watch videos? The whole VARC, right? Visual, auditory, writing, and kinesthetic. What's their learning style? And so ask the student how they would learn best. We have found in our program that one-on-one coaching is so valuable, and the students wind up loving it. We in APRN and in the NP program, we have a remediation coach. Find out for your program if you have a remediation coach. That one-on-one attention, even just a few hours, is so helpful and really makes the student feel cared for in the end. And then set a short-term follow-up to see how they're doing. So this is my last slide. I'm going to hand it over to Sharon, and this is an example of a warning. Here is your second place where you can find the academic and clinical warning form. Again, the whole thing is 4 pages. You fill out the first 3, and the last page is for follow-up. And nowadays, with everything online, if you're not seeing the student, you can send it through HelloSign, DocuSign, so that all parties can sign it easily. You don't have to chase down the student or go to their house and have them sign it. So this is what it looks like if you've never seen it. And again, at the top here, it's either an academic or a clinical warning. And for those, it's either an ethical or professional. That can happen during academic or clinical, didactic or lab. And then it can be, again, down here as clinical or academic, depending on the setting.
So anyone having any trouble downloading this form or accessing it? Anyone having any trouble? Good. All right. So as we move on, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say that,
Right.
that's my last slide. You take it from here.
Okay. So I just want to stop too right now and just thank you all for attending. It's very commendable that you all want to develop as adjunct faculty, and we too, as full-time faculty, we enjoy the interaction and the learning too. Every time we provide a presentation, we learn along with you. So thank you for putting your comments in here, and at the end, putting them in the CEU evaluation. So we want to go over the next couple of slides are examples. So these are examples only of a couple of quality written evidence-based practice ways to respond in your academic warning. So this one here, you can see the blue highlights. This is for a deficiency. So I personally like to start off the same line in every one of my academic warnings. GNRS course, UNRS course, whatever the name of the course is currently in week 8 out of 12. Non-confrontational, factual only, right? It also helps you to see that if you write up a second one, where the second one aligns with this one. So if you put 8 out of 12 weeks, 8 out of 16 weeks, 6 out of 8 weeks, that's going to put a little bit more perspective of the urgency or the critical need of this. If you were in week 6 out of an 8 week, that may feel differently, and the remediation might be different than if you are in week 4 out of 16 weeks. Okay, so again, there's no proprietary to this first sentence. I personally copy and paste this into every single one of my academic warnings or clinical warnings, and I just changed the numbers as needed. TAD has a current grade of, and simply put in both. Don't just put a letter grade. And you go into your Canvas and you go into the date. So this academic warning will actually be dated on page 1. So on day 1, what was his grade in Canvas? And it'll tell you right in Canvas what is the percentile and what is the letter grade. Okay? And then you follow it up with the blue. Is this a deficiency? Is it a violation? You have already highlighted on page 1 whether it's which one of those 4 types of warning it is: ethical, professional, academic, or clinical. So then you write what is that deficiency, or what is that violation? And here you will see there are 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, later missing discussion posts. Tad has missed 1, 2, 6, and 7. But look, there's 12 weeks. So he's missed 4 out of 12. So number 2, missing assignments. He missed exactly, and you want to be specific here. It's very important that you do not put in vague content. Missing assignments. He's missing week 5 paper and week 7 case study. What else? Emails were sent to Tad on, and then there's the date. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4. So do you understand the value of those line number 3, the email sent to Tad? This demonstrates that by week 8, 4 emails were sent to Tad prior to writing up this academic warning. So then you're covering yourself as well, saying you have made efforts as an adjunct faculty to reach out multiple times. Okay? And the assumption here is when you see 6, 10, 20, you can see already that was already 4 weeks into the semester, because the semester generally starts in May if you see a June date. All right, then what follows is the communication, the exact communication that was sent. That's just basically covering your tail, right? How you have, as an adjunct faculty, have reached out to Tad. So what I personally do is I just cut and paste right from the APU Gmail and or Canvas. So there are 2 places that students can communicate: APU email, Gmail, and or Canvas. And they are, most of the times they are linked, but if it comes in an APU only, it is not linked to Canvas. If it's submitted if there's an email to Canvas, it is linked to your Gmail, but not vice versa, okay? All right, if a student texts you, you will see right there, 6/26/20, text message to Tad. Tad, can you phone me this AM? And you can see, good morning, Tad. On the 23rd, there was no reply. So that's your way of documenting just an activities that have occurred. All right? Is that clear? Any questions on this slide of what makes this a good deficiency letter? All right, next slide, please. Then the next one you can see in the blue, it's a violation. And this one again is to Sally, and Sally has a current grade of 42%, which is also an F. Sally submitted a paper on paper number 1 on October 15th. Paper number 1 was due by October 15th at 11:59. So she submitted it on time. Wonder why there's this detail in there. Why this specific detail? Well, if you read, according to Turnitin, she submitted that paper. So this paper was due on October 15th. So that means the student had approximately 9 weeks prior to that to submit the paper. She submitted it within 30 minutes of it being due, and it came up 65% similarity score of another paper she previously submitted in another course. So when you submit your assignments in Canvas, there is a prompt and it asks you whether or not you want to turn it in. So for this student, for every student in this course, the turn it in button was turned on. And when it is for assignments, it will show you exactly where any previous similarity content occurred. And the student actually self-plagiarized. And that is a no-no because self-plagiarism, according to APA, means it is not original work. So in other words, if Amanda Hagan submitted an assignment when she was an undergraduate and then became a graduate student and resubmitted that same assignment, that's a no-no. The only exception to that rule, and that's only exception, would be occasionally with doctoral students when you're building on something, but that's even rare in and of itself. So we won't go into that, but that would be a violation because it's a violation against APA. All right. And so you can see what occurred thereafter and the detail that went into that occurrence. And you can see right here in that occurrence, it actually states right in there, this was sent to the student. Not only is it a violation of the APU handbook, it was also a violation of the graduate nursing handbook, and it was also a violation 3 of the student handbook. This paper reads as if it was written hastily and not at graduate level. The grade was given at a 21 out of 100. Okie dokie. All right, any questions on that violation or something that would be similar to that? All right, next. So when you're filling out the form, Dr. Thurman mentioned there are 4 pages. On page number 3, I believe, is that correct, Dr. Thurman? Is remedial activities and resources. What activities or what resources did you provide all students in that course? And perhaps even individually for that student, similar to what Janet was referring to earlier. So these number 1 through 6, I copy and paste these resources for almost every single warning that I write. And the reason why is because I provide these resources every time. So if you go into a course syllabus, if you go into Canvas, you've already fulfilled number 1. You provide that to the student. Has the student reached out to you? Number 2, did you provide any Zoom sessions? Did you provide any face-to-face huddles, anything like that? A huddle is a resource. Opportunities. Did you provide time at the end of the class? Any questions? Just like we're doing right now. That's a resource. Weekly announcements, instructions, sample assignments, interactive links in the course. APU Writing Center. If it was a writing assignment, APU Writing Center. If you recall, violation was about plagiarism. So then you would want to say, did you provide them resources to the Writing Center? All faculty who have a writing assignment should have on there a friendly reminder or in their syllabus, Writing Center resources. All the syllabus that I review for a School of Nursing has a link to university policies. In that link are all these different resources. Number 6, Student Success Center. So again, yours might have additional ones, but these are typical ones that you would have for almost every warning that you write. So again, this is not proprietary. You can take a picture with your cell phone. You can keep these slides, but we encourage you to use similar resources every time that you fill out one of these forms. Any question on that? Any question about any resource that you wonder whether or not it belongs here?
The only thing I would say is what I said before, see if you have an actual remediation coach for your program. Because like I said, we have someone who meets one-on-one in the APRN. So find out from your chair. Yeah.
Excellent. That's an excellent resource. All right, next slide.
Oh, we have a question.
Oh, great.
Catherine.
Okay, I wrote a note
Dr.
to
Heinlein.
myself. Yes, I have a note. So this Dr. Titus looks like a running document. To me, it looks like, you know, you've been in communication.
No, not
no.
necessarily, no.
Okay, because the communications have been ongoing, but
But if you notice in one of these documents, you could see the faculty sent one on 6/10, then the faculty
Yep.
sent one on 6/13, then the faculty on 6/20, and there's no response back. So the faculty is being patient, is trying to work with the student, and there's no response. And by the fourth communication, one-way communication, there's no response. The faculty writes out a written warning and demonstrates what the communications were, and there was no reply from the student.
okay, so back to that then. It seems like there's going to be, over a course of time in this semester, how many written warnings? And do you get 3? So the written warning, number 1. Number 2 is what kind of warning? How many written warnings? Because it looks like this person should be out.
Yeah,
like
so
like a long time ago.
Excellent question, Dr. Heinlein. And we cannot, Dr. Thurman and I cannot address that, because that is an individual decision between the faculty and the department, and whatever policies they have within that department. Even though it's a school of nursing, not all departments have the same policies within the School of Nursing. The GNRS, department might have it, or graduate level might have it, or undergraduate, or the 2 for 2, or whatever. Each one may have their own policies. What you're going to want to do is work with your faculty. But if you saw those 4 dates, you can clearly see this is the first formal written warning that was given. And what this showed was a demonstration. Faculty attempted 4 times before the faculty then initiated the first formal written warning. Okay, that's why I said earlier, if you choose to give an oral warning, follow it up in writing. And you can choose to make that written warning either informal or formal. This form is a formal written warning. So is that clear?
And then
It's back to all the comments at the adjunct faculty have provided, like the time sorry.
Yes.
Because it either is successful, and the 4th page is they have met the remediation plan and it's okay, or they have not met it. So if they've met it, then it's great, you're done. But if they haven't met it, it keeps going. So you're right, it is time consuming.
It is time consuming, but remember what Professor Wessel said earlier in those adjunct comments. In the long run, and Professor Wessel has had a lot of experience in this area. In the long run, it will save you. So one of the things I want you to know that helped me have expertise in this area is I actually sit on a university committee as well for grievances. So I have had many years ago, one of my supervisors said to me, Sharon, you write up a lot in your warning. Well, I can tell you anytime, and it hasn't been many, it's only been 2 or 3 times in my 15 years of teaching full time, 2 or 3 times that a student has gone above the warning to a higher level up the chain of the command. And what has kept me out of trouble, what has kept the School of Nursing out of trouble, and what has kept the university out of trouble is this documentation. No different than nursing, right? So there, occasionally a student will want to file a grievance. And when they do, the provost's office gets called in and he chooses faculty to sit on this committee. I'm one of those faculty that have sat on grievance committees. And what we do is we review every document. I want to see what that faculty or adjunct faculty processed in dealing with the warning and how it was written and what was stated. So that's why we're not here to scare you. We don't want that to be a barrier to you. But just like in clinical setting as nurses, right? Documentation, documentation, document. If it's not documented, it didn't happen.
Mhm. Yeah.
You all are experts at that. All right. So in your students' success, and I agree with Dr. Thurman, one of the things I do is I follow a lot of our SSVs. One of them is Chronicle of Higher Ed. So that's something that I encourage you might want to look at in LinkedIn. I follow LinkedIn every day, Chronicle of Higher Ed, everything that comes out. And I often read most of their articles. There's been recent articles on calling it Student Success Forum. So there is an argument for that, Dr. Thurman. But just so happens at APU, one of our resources that we offer is our Student Success Center. If it's a written assignment, you want to direct them to the Writing Center. And that's easy to even Google. You can put Azusa Pacific University Writing Center. You click on that and it shows them where to make an appointment, how to make an appointment, what workshops that are available, if it's a speaking role, if it's an argumentative paper, if it's a case study. They have experts at the Writing Center that can help you with that. Okay. Next slide. We also have what's called the Student Success Center. And right here, you can see the link to that. And you can see, look at all the many different resources. You can put any of these resources actually on your academic warning form or clinical warning form that help your student. Anything that would be helpful, place that on there. And you might want to say these were offered. I would be careful in the ADR one, accessibility, disability resources, because you don't want to offer that if you haven't spoken with the student previously. And you want to be careful in discussing that with a student. I do know of a case that went to grievance where a faculty suggested the students went to the ADR when the student claims they did not have a disability. So they felt like there was a concern there from the faculty standpoint. So you want to be careful. Again, the federal law is if a student has a ADR, a disability, they themselves are to initiate it. And if it is granted, the ADR office will send you the faculty, a written accommodation for that student. Okay, so if that has been given, then you certainly want to provide that resource for them on the written warning. So that's why I was wanting to ask Janet that question. If the student had received like an oral communication accommodation, then you want to make sure that you as a faculty met that, and here's the proof of that in that written warning. Does that make sense to you all? Yeah, I see some nods. Yep, thumbs up, anybody? Are you still there with us? Yes, okay. So thank you, I see those. All right, lastly, the last resource that we have is APU Cares. Are you all familiar with that?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Okay, APU Cares is a resource for our students. So who is a part of the APU Cares team? When might you want to offer that? Well, there are many different answers for each one of these questions. So we're not going to go over all of those today. We know that your time is precious. So we know you need to get home, get to dinner, get to wherever you're going. But what we want you to do is take a look at this link. It's going to answer all of these questions for you. Who is a part of the CARES team? What happens once you as an adjunct faculty refer a student to the APU's care? How long does it take for that team to respond? I can tell you right now, I had a student last semester who was in financial trouble, didn't know that she could get through the semester. I referred her to the APU Cares. I checked back with that student in less than 24 hours. It was on the weekend, and she told me the care teams had gotten with her. gotten in touch with her. I had another student whose mother was murdered, killed. I contacted the APU care team. They contacted her within hours, just actually in a few hours, to offer whatever support that she can. So there are opportunities for all kinds of support for our students. I actually had a student who called me up one day and said, Dr. Titus, I need to let you know I'm homeless. I was like, okay. My first words were, I'm sorry to hear that. How can I support you? And the student told me what their needs were. They told me they could.
But you can if you were quiet.
Excuse me? Yeah.
I'm muted,
So,
you're okay.
okay. So the student told me what her needs were. Her number one needs were books. That's what she told me her first need was. So I did what I could to get her books for free, and also contacted the APU care teams to help make some of that happen as well. So all different kinds of care needs that your students might need. Next.
I have a quick question about CARES. Does the student have to agree to be referred to CARES?
No.
Okay.
No.
I always feel kind of funny referring them if they
Yeah,
have
me
agreed.
too.
Okay.
Yeah, me too, Amanda. I sometimes it feels a bit awkward, but
Yeah.
remember, you're wanting to offer care, and
Yeah.
you don't. Most of the time, we don't really know that student. So,
Yeah.
like, I had a student who was suicidal at one point. I think Dr. Heinlein has some experience with this with some other students as well, and that she has offered to ask the student, can I refer you to CARES? But sometimes if the student is in an emotional situation, you want to make sure that somebody's reaching out to them, maybe physically can get to them. If you're at, way far from that student as far as distance. So you want to make sure somebody's able to get there and help them. All right. Sometimes we learn best what is a good example of academic mourning by looking at bad examples. And so Florence here, she, Flo, she's always got to have her nose in nursing, right? So she said, this is a bad example. And so you can see up here in the professor here didn't even circle whether or not it was a deficiency or a violation, and said, I'm sorry to inform you that your current GPA is 66%. There are several assignments that are over 5 days late. I'll be sending you a formal documentation by tomorrow. Well, that's not very helpful, right? Student's probably not going to sleep very well. Please let me know if you have any questions. Well, of course they do. It's coming tomorrow, right? The current grade is now an F. Well, how did it go from a D to an F? That's pretty unclear, right? And then the timeline for remediation, I actually know of a faculty who received the lead faculty actually received this wording. Please respond to how we may assist you. One of her adjunct faculties, or maybe it was another faculty that sent this to the lead faculty. So these are true words that were actually written. So this is not a helpful example. And then expected behavior, student needs to provide information by 1/1/2000 at 8 a.m. Wow. And then if you look at remedial, individual instruction from faculty, care. Well, would that be caring to you? How would that feel? So again, thank you, Flo, for this poor example of a action plan here for remediation.
All right, and I'm gonna just say we have 5 minutes left before it's 8 o'clock.
That's all we need. Yep. All right, this last couple of slides, what we wanted to talk about here is there is a protocol of how to complete these forms. Again, we talked a couple of times. If you give an oral warning, follow it up in writing. If it is written, you can choose whether it is informal or formal writing. If it's a formal written, it is on this form. This protocol that you see right here is one department's protocol. it may not be your department's protocol. You must consult with your department. The ELM program may be different from the RN to BSN, and in fact, I know they do. Even in the master's level, there are different programs in the master's program, and they have different protocols within the different departments of masters. But in general, hear me clearly, this is in general, the protocol is you're going to go to that student first, you're going to write up, you're going to give an oral or a written warning, you're going to draft it, you're going to have somebody review that. I have been teaching for 15 years full time. I never send a formal written warning to any student, even today, without sending it to another faculty or my supervisor to review it. I never do it because you want to make sure every word is correct and appropriate. So draft it, edit it, sign it, and then it will get sent to the student, the program chair, the program manager, because the program manager then makes sure if it is a formal written warning, it goes in the student file. Next. Pro tips, tell them early. We talked about that. Place it in writing, email it the student before it becomes a formal academic written warning. Contact your lead faculty or your SME, the core subject matter expert. Find a mentor, and that mentor doesn't necessarily have to be your supervisor or the course lead. It could just be somebody who's been that you respect, or like Janet Wessel, who's been teaching a long time that you might want to draw on her. Dr. Heinlein, I think she's been teaching about 40 years. So she's got lots of experience, okay? Save a template of your warnings. Say one for clinical, one for academic. Don't put any names on there. That's gonna save you time. Again and again and again, we saw a barrier was time. Save your template. FERPA. Hopefully all of you know what the federal law is regarding Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. Particularly for higher ed, we look at the Privacy Act. Know the FERPA law, and it's right there for you. Don't forget to close out your warning. Has the student met the criteria? This page, I will tell you, page number 4 is challenging. When a student does not sign a warning and give it back to you for you to close it out, how do you process that? Talk about that with your mentor and or lead faculty on how your department wants to handle that. Next. All right, as we close out our session today, one of the things that we know is every student in higher education, doesn't matter where it is, Harvard to APU, they're all using AI. So one of the things that we want you to do is to also use AI. You probably saw we used AI throughout this whole presentation here today. There are proper ways and improper ways of using, for example, ChatGPT to write up your academic warnings. So one of the proper ways to do it is you see in the example, to help you generate sentences for your academic warning, you might simply want to put in underline how to write a clinical warning. That's your first prompt. For a nursing student, that's your second prompt. And the third prompt is what you are seeking. That warning is going to be about inappropriate attire. And when I actually put that in, this is what ChatGPT came out. It said, maintain a professional appearance and crucial aspect of nursing practice. You see, and then it went ... It just continued. You can actually use those words. That would be appropriate words in your AI. So if one of your barriers is, I don't know what words to say, I don't know what sentence to say, use ChatGPT. What would be inappropriate though, is if you ask ChatGPT, improper, number 2, write a clinical warning. Well, you can see right there, the response is, it is with a sense of responsibility that I bring to your attention certain concerns that have been noted during your recent clinical, that is actually what ChatGPT responded. The language is verbose, it is not specific, it doesn't address the clinical warning. So that would be an inappropriate way. If you have not used ChatGPT, just play with it. It's 3.5 is free, 4.0 is not yet free, but 3.5 is free. So what you want to do is, if you're going to learn it, I would encourage you to learn the TRACE method. You can just Google it, TRACE. Each letter stands for an acronym, and that is a prompt engineering method that will teach you how to write a proper clinical warning, or it'll teach you how to engineer an appropriate prompt, because ChatGPT is only going to respond to however you engineered that prompt. Okay, as we close, we want to remind you from this APU nursing student, in the view of eternity, we will be judged most closely, not on the basis of how many courses we taught, how many students were trained, how many syllabi were printed, how many books were published, or how many academic warnings we gave. But we are going to be judged on whether or not we kept our faith and our example of faith integration with our student. And there's another AI generation.
Did you guys catch that Sharon made these pictures are AI? These are not real pictures. So she taught me this today. She put into these AI machines, give me a nursing student with her arms open with burgundy scrubs. So
you can see this one was by Bing, B-I-N-G.
Yeah, by Bing.
Each slide had different companies. You'll see that one was by Crayon.
Mm-hmm. Since you all have access to this, go through these pictures, and it's fascinating. You can create your own pictures here, crayon.com. And then this one she made as well. So that's her.
This one's by Leonardo. That's the company I probably use the most.
Mm-hmm.
Good. All right. As we close, the last slide.
Oh,
you want to hit the very last slide?
Hang on. I got to share one more time here.
Yeah. The last slide is our survey.
Oh,
for your CEU.
Okay,
go ahead.
Perfect.
And that's another AI.
Oh yes, this is. Can you put the survey in the chat as well?
Yes.
Oh, thank you so much. So if you can't link it through here, please fill out the survey in the chat.
Remember when you take your CEU survey, there were four, we're not going to give you the answers. There were four types of warnings. And we hope that you walk away from this presentation today with at least 2 strategies on how to write good, effective, right? Effective warnings that will help your students succeed. We want them to succeed. So thank you all for your time. What's the website we use for creating all images? AI images. Each photo, I use different websites. So go back and look at the bottom of every slide. I gave you the name of the company that I used for that slide. And I purposely chose a different company for each picture so that you would see the pros and cons to those companies. And just one little hint, I use the TRACE method for every one of those pictures. You're welcome.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead. Any other, here's some more questions here. Thank you all so much. And thank you for your honesty about how your support that you feel. Yes, Sharon, go ahead.
Yeah, and do let us know whatever, this presentation was because different faculty wanted to learn this, some of these practices. So please let Amanda or I know of how we can help serve you and to help prepare you with other professional development. We're so grateful for you. Thank you for teaching at APU and for choosing us.
Yes, thanks you guys so much. Okay, you're free to go. Please do the evaluation. And again, also reach out if you have any questions. So thank you so much.
God bless you all.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, you guys.